It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where Bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this, you talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing it? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and you say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed. Those people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue of voting because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisper, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short. Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
Acknowledge it. It was said sarcastically. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisper. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 6.
Michelle Steele supports a national ban on abortion, with no exceptions for rape, incest, or your life. And states allowed to monitor your pregnancy. What would Michelle Steele's plans mean for you? Let's not find out.
I am what I am. I don't want to.
You and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them.
No judge looked at it.
And said
they said
no
we didn't have
standing.
standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The President of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you do a special on it, I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you, we have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter. Because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the President there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisper, so he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us, we won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing about it. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom work with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if you weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
Your time
I
is up.
think we
Thank
can
you.
do very well.
You've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to
Yes.
the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held in gangs among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how. Saying international humanitarian law must be respected, Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead, nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7th, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran, and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no president either, by the way, for 4 years, gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, and far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, I said, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know, you covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading their money around. Look at what's going on in the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un, and it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on national security, including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
And she's the one that caused it. That's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it. Because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just asked one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way, gets paid a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
The ABC News presidential debate will continue after this.
Mình là phải vượt qua núi, trời ơi, nó nhỏ phải không? Trời ơi, dễ thương. Anh này anh bảo chứ gì nên nói cái câu phá phiếu mà đã sợ rồi.
Bây giờ bình luận nè.
Bình luận à?
Bây giờ bình luận nè, anh Thái. Đó. Chụp ngoài vô nè.
Bình luận ơi.
Rồi bây giờ bình luận nào, cho luôn.
Bây giờ nè, anh Thái là camera hết rồi. Đó.
Khải làm chứ.
Giờ nó gì bình luận hay đó, đó.
Bây giờ bình luận nào, rồi để bé làm một bây giờ anh này là trông, còn cô anh này là camera, còn bé ở dưới cái là trọng tài.
Anh Thái vô hát thăm show.
Kính thưa quý vị, và sau đây hai nhân vật nổi tiếng nhất thế giới với debate, một bên là Kamala, một bên là Trump. Trang sẽ là trọng tài ở giữa và hai người này sẽ là khán giả chấm điểm.
nước bia không có uống đâu.
Bấm lên coi.
Chứ tôi không biết hả? Cái này là
Đi la tối cũng đẹp quá. Còn trước.
ok, bây giờ mở màn nè. Bây giờ anh Khải đánh giá về sau gà nhà của anh Khải tốt hay xấu hôm nay, ok không?
Actually á, nếu mà như là
Đây anh cũng đây. Anh nói đi.
dạ con
Nếu mà như là phải là đảng Dân Chủ nha, Khải sẽ very happy.
Yep.
Tại vì giống như anh biết rồi, trước khi lên là nói cái này, this is Kamala Harris debate to lose, đúng không? Tại vì trên tinh thần á,
Mỗi gần chút đi.
giờ trên tinh thần á là anh biết rồi, tổng thống Trump á là đã ra trận mạc bao nhiêu năm nay rồi,
7 lần.
là bao nhiêu những cái xẻo xiết, bao nhiêu những gì là bị khui ra hết rồi, đúng không? Những cái tập tuyệt chiêu gì là cũng phải tung ra hết rồi mới thắng được chứ. Trong cái đó Kamala Harris chỉ tranh mấy cái chức nhỏ thôi, từ xưa giờ mấy chức lôm côm ra được ông Joe Biden đưa ra đứng chung liên danh thôi. Tức là bả giống như trong bóng tối á, còn tổng thống Trump
Có 2 phút trả lời anh Khải.
ít nhất là Khải thấy á, bà Kamala Harris bả chưa có phạm một cái sai lầm gì hết.
Ok. Bây giờ anh đánh giá Kamala performance 3-4 phút vừa rồi là good. 1 trên 10 anh đánh giá bao nhiêu điểm?
Đâu, Khải không có đánh giá good thì bác. Đối với Khải á, bả đừng có phạm sai lầm là Dân Chủ very happy rồi.
Ok. Rồi mới đánh giá tổng chung hôm nay. Quý vị, người ta nói á, là nam nữ bình đẳng như là lý thuyết á, nhưng mà thực tế nó phải vậy đi. Người nữ mà nói về nam thì không sao, mà người nam nói về nữ là thật ra là bất lịch sự, hoặc là trong đây quý vị phải thấy tổng chung hôm nay rất là dè dặt, rất là cool, mà phải đổi cái chiến lược hoàn toàn là người điềm đạm lại. Nhưng điềm đạm lại không phải là thực sự của người tổng thống chung. Tổng thống chung là người mạnh mẽ, aggressive. Nhưng mà tổng thống chung hôm nay không có được cơ hội để mà sống chính mình, đúng không? Sống chính mình và phải dè dặt và nói một câu cái là sự tại sao phụ nữ. Bà Kamala Harris bữa nay lợi đây gì là phụ nữ, cái điều đấy rõ ràng. Nên tổng thống chung quá bị dè dặt. Nhưng khi mà dè dặt thì tổng thống chung không như một con cũng như là một người mạnh mẽ như Mai mong muốn.
Đúng rồi.
Ok, là một đó là về thần thái. Nhưng về nói về cái cốt truyện hôm nay thì tổng thống chung làm việc rất là tốt, đúng được lập trường và những cái point về biên giới, về phá thai đều một mực không hề thay đổi. Còn nếu mà nói đánh giá bà Kamala hôm nay thì Mai đánh giá bà làm việc tốt hơn là bình tĩnh hơn, không có cười ha 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 ha, cười không đúng chỗ thì hơn. Nhưng về cái cốt ý bà nói ra thì hoàn toàn sai lệch quá nhiều. Thứ nhất bà nói là bà đã giữ nền dân chủ, đó là Mai hoàn toàn không đồng ý. Thứ hai, vấn đề về biên giới. Thứ ba là vấn đề phá thai. Bà nói sao? Bà Kamala là hoàn toàn là chống phá thai, hoàn toàn. Đó là xin lỗi, ủng hộ phá thai, ủng hộ phá thai. Ông Hồng hoàn toàn
bả là chống luật cấm phá thai.
Thì đúng rồi, nhưng mà phá thai thoải mái vô tư, anh sẽ tin. Tổng thống chung là
anh Pháp Bùi muốn ngồi nói chuyện với anh Tạo đi.
Quan cái
đây là anh Pháp đi rồi đó.
Pháp Quan ngồi đi.
Anh vui, anh là đóng vai là bên xanh đi, bên xanh nó dễ hiểu gì hết, còn đồng đồ phép này. Rồi về nói vấn đề kinh tế và vấn đề mà theo là đánh China, anh nghĩ sao về và khi mà cái nói vấn đề về kinh tế
thì giống như anh Mike nói đúng, tức là nếu mà tổng thống Trump đó, đúng không, mà cứ ép bà Kamala phải debate về vấn đề kinh tế, vấn đề di dân
thì sau này mình tự được sao?
Because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe, like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin. Hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try to get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left, I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify,
they threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done. Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to define one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted you to respond to something you said earlier. And please, I'll give you a minute.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow, quiet place. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use it, and maybe it hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate as soon as they left. Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is Commander-in-Chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
You talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I wanted to move on to Afghanistan.
Said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying, one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you. Otherwise, we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this. And the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be Commander-in-Chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations
Yeah, thank
with the
you.
Taliban.
So, if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something, I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so
I
I'm
don't
asking.
know. I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what you just said. going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five. They admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad that you can't get away with that.
Briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life, to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's turn
Trump,
to
we have to
policy.
move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy, please.
To defund the police. She has a flat plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
She has
you
a
have to
plan
move on
to
to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's what her plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsey
to
Graham.
the
President
former
Trump.
president has said
No,
something
sorry.
twice and I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry, we're
I just need to
gonna move on,
respond
Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he
President
said
Trump, this is
multiple
now
times.
your third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up, they wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so did they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of it. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something. I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, we supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as Vice President, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time. When I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it, pass this pro-law in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a lot
Made a
of
mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It was all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to do. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or is being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Shawn Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Afternoon.
The ABC News presidential debate will continue after this.
2-3 phút. Closing statement.
2 phút. Closing statement.
Dạ, mỗi người được 1 phút.
Bà đi trước, ông Dung đi sau. Ông Vẫn Thu Tì à?
Cái gì không?
Không, Vẫn Thu Tì á. Closing trước 2 phút để lên chung. Bữa Quang không ngồi rồi. Giờ mỗi người có 2 phút closing statement. Ồ, mẹ, bà gầy là tiếng rưỡi.
Hơn quá rưỡi.
Bởi vậy.
Ồ, mẹ.
Lúc
Bữa nay mình thấy gì?
Còn mỗi người còn được 1 phút, 2 phút.
Cái debate này là 3
2
người
phút
debate
closing
một người.
statement nữa.
Này, nếu như quý vị coi kỹ ra có câu rồi. Đâu tới giờ
người
này
được
hỏi
2
cậu
phút
dùng chung.
closing statement.
Lát nói. Để lát nói.
Hỏi dùng chung hả? Tất cả đều chung.
Còn mỗi người được 2 phút, tức là 4 phút nữa mới hết.
Ok, cái cuộc debate này là không có phe
Trong
nào.
đó mỗi người sẽ
Nếu
được
mà
2
quý
phút
vị mà pay
để mà
attention
nói cái lời cuối.
đầu tiên hỏi câu hỏi ông Trung
Closing statement.
gọi đây bật chưa đến câu nha, về kinh tế, về Ukraine, về tất cả luôn.
Thì không,
ví dụ như
mỗi người được 2
tiếng
phút
Anh
để
Ukraine.
nói cái lời cuối.
Ông Trung nói là tao
thì bà
close
Kamala
24
Harris sẽ nói
hours.
trước.
Còn
Để
hỏi
ông Trump sẽ còn mỗi người 2 phút là
sao?
đó.
Họ hỏi là có bây giờ gặp Putin chưa? I met Zelensky 2 times.
Còn
The
closing
question
statement
is hỏi
tức
là
là coi như là
Putin
sắp
chưa?
kết thúc rồi, còn 4 phút nữa là kết thúc. Bây giờ họ được cái break ngắn mấy phút, xong rồi vô lại. Mỗi người được nói cái lời kết thúc.
Không, bây giờ trong debate đây, closing
Nói xong rồi mới nói.
Chung chung thì thấy là ông Trump nói chuyện xong rồi là có lợi thế, là bởi vì hai bên đều là rất là đòi. Nhưng mà ông Trump kỳ này là ông rất là tuyệt thố, cũng không có interrupt bà Kamala Harris và ông không có mà đùng lên. Thì nội cái đó thôi là thấy là mọi người bên đảng Cộng hòa là thấy yên tâm rồi. Rồi bà Kamala Harris là
người chính biểu là hay mà còn
mạnh,
chân hát mẹ anh sẽ biết
nhưng mà điều đó nó cũng tốt, nhưng mà nó cũng có nhiều cái bất lợi là vì thấy là bà ở Christie bà interrupt ông Trump một đôi lần, trong khi ông Trump không hề interrupt bà. Người ta chỉ sợ là ông Trump sẽ interrupt, nhưng mà ông Trump không interrupt. Nội cái đó thôi là ông Trump thắng. Cái thằng Bình đó là nó bên tụi dân chủ,
mình rõ là
Bình nó là bên dân chủ
gì đâu, ta hỏi ông Trung không?
bạn nữa của anh cứ tưởng nó
liên quan hai dập
là bên dân chủ.
Bà để biến cái nó đổi đề tài liền. Con hỏi này nói tiếp chuyện không sao, ông Trung nó cắt liền. Ê, Trung vô time out, what the hell là sao?
Phe chứ Trâm nghĩ trong năm nay cũng thắng là ngoại trừ Tri Đình thôi.
Ngoại trừ nó hơi lớn nha.
Ông Trump. Nhưng ông Trump không có nổi nóng, thành ra Vâng.
Ông dẹp qua mình này. Có người đúng không? Mấy kia.
Không, bà này bà đóng kịch hay lắm. Những cái lúc nào hỏi là bà làm giống như bà sụt sùi như là bà muốn khóc vậy đó, bà đóng kịch rất hay, y chang như là Kimberly Hồ vậy đó.
Đây là hơn nữa, Kimberly còn nước mắt cá sấu nữa, bà này chưa?
Vừa có vừa ép view nữa đó. Mà Kim vừa nói vừa ép view luôn á, ghê lắm á.
Cái bà đó là thiệt là rất là giữ.
Dữ lắm á.
Rất là giữ
Nói như vậy nè, người ta nghĩ rằng là ông Trump sẽ mất control, mà ông Trump control được là coi như là thắng rồi. Chưa nói
rất là
chuyện
đẹp,
khác.
rất là đẹp. Hôm nay tổng thống Trump giống như mình phát vậy.
Từ nãy tôi nói không cho. Đừng bút nữa. Giờ đó sơ sơ đấy. Đúng không?
Ai cũng lo bên Đảng Cộng Hòa, ai cũng lo, đúng không? Đúng không?
Thải đâu không đây?
Ủa, không đâu rồi?
Đây này, biết cái này. Cái này hả? Cái này hả? Không phải ngoài khai đâu. Không phải ngoài khai đâu đâu.
Không cầm đi luôn rồi.
Anh gọi em nào?
Cái đục đầu, cái đục này nè.
Ở đâu? Tôi có đâu.
Hỏi Khải không? Cái biết đâu.
Có Khải hỏi không?
Live from the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Here again, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back tonight. The time has come for closing statements on Vice President Harris.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it, because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like, we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world they laugh. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world and from all.
People watching tonight, you remember what that was like?
Nói gì
Remember
mà
when
chưa
an
bao giờ
insurance
mà làm
company
cái
could
chuyện chưa bao
deny
giờ mà làm gì trong
if
thành phố mà ra mà cứ nói giống như là thì ai mà chẳng nói được.
Rồi chắc chắn là đâu hay nào đâu. Chứ thế nào đi.
Thằng nào chắc sợ quá trốn rồi.
Rồi đúng không?
Vâng, có lẽ là các bạn vừa nghe cái phần trình bày của mời lên nha. Mai.
Ok rồi.
Vâng, như vậy là chúng ta đã vừa nghe xong một cái phần tranh luận rất là sôi nổi giữa hai ứng cử viên tổng thống, và đây có lẽ là lần cuối cùng rồi đó, chưa biết là lần tới là khi nào. Có lẽ là bây giờ chúng ta mời anh Mai chỉ mời anh
Khải Đáo
Bác Bùi đi.
Khải Đáo.
Với anh Thành nữa, hồi nãy giờ có nghe rất là rõ rồi, mời anh lên có một vài ý kiến đi. Mời lên đây đi. Không sao, thì mình nghe thế nào anh.
Check. Rồi, ready, 1, 2, 3, check. Rồi.
Ok Mai, mời lên.
Đưa lên 10 phút rồi nha.
Vâng, thì anh mời anh lên.
10 phút rồi sao phải đi.
Khải Đạo đâu?
Sao phải đu sao đi.
Chắc Khải bắt phần câu chuyện thôi.
Check.
Rồi.
Anh Long Nguyên không?
Bây giờ ai đóng chơi dân chủ?
Không có đóng gì hết, bây giờ mình cứ nhìn nhận như vậy cái vấn đề này như thế nào thôi.
Em là
không phải dân chủ sao ai dân chủ được.
Nói lẹ luôn đó.
Đầu tiên hết mời Mai đi, nãy giờ là nghe từ đầu thì thấy như thế nào?
Cái biết chứ đâu ạ?
Mai biết mà.
Luôn phát cái
Quý
rồi.
vị, nãy giờ Mai coi thì Mai ngồi ngoài trời đã nóng mà coi còn nóng hơn quý vị. Nóng ở đây á, là người Mỹ bao giờ cũng mở miệng ra là công bằng. Nhưng mà quý vị thấy hôm nay cái sự bất công nó trước mặt quý vị mà nó dài 1 tiếng rưỡi đồng hồ. Bất công chỗ nào? Quý vị thấy đầu tới đuôi. Bây giờ mình nói công bằng thôi nha. Khi mà đặt câu hỏi đầu tiên là Donald Trump, this and that. Quý vị không có một câu hỏi nào: ê bà Harris, trong 3 năm rưỡi vừa rồi bà làm gì? Kinh tế làm sao? Bla. Toàn bắt đầu đặt câu hỏi với Donald Trump, number one. Thứ hai, mỗi người được 2 phút. Mà khi Tổng thống Trump chưa hết lời là bên người NBC đã nhắc lời. Mà quý vị không nghe một câu nào bà Harris bị nhắc tất cả. Thậm chí bà nói leo. Đó là một cái chuyện không công bằng. Rồi bây giờ thứ hai nữa, quý vị coi á, Harris nổi tiếng là nói dốc rồi. Nhưng bữa nay quý vị coi nói dốc online luôn rồi, nên là livestream nói dốc luôn. Nói dốc và phải nói là mình phải nói là gì? Mỹ nói là lie to the teeth á, xạo đến cái răng luôn á. Mà bữa nay thấy vậy. Bây giờ mình đi từng phần nha. Bây giờ anh Thắng thấy lại cái cầm đồ này sao cho cái nào?
Có không?
Vâng.
Vâng thì bây giờ mình coi cái phần chi tiết sau đi, tại vì chi tiết thì nó quá nhiều để mà mới chi tiết nó nhận xét.
Có lẽ là đầu tiên hết rồi nói về hình thức đi. Hình thức thì Mai nói rằng là có một cái sự không công bằng đó, thì mình thấy là cái thời lượng thì nó chia ra, cái thời lượng thì công bằng cho mọi người, nhưng mà cái cách đặt câu hỏi có vẻ như là không công bằng không? Anh Thắng có thấy điều đó không?
Đúng là như vậy, tôi thấy là nó không công bằng trong cái cách đặt câu hỏi. Thứ hai đó là theo như tôi hiểu, đọc tin tức từ mấy ngày nay là khi mà người này đang nói thì microphone người kia là phải bị cúp lại.
Chính xác.
Thế mà trong lúc ông Trump nói một đôi lần, bà Kamala Harris, cái mai của bà ta không bị cúp và bà ta đã phản biện ngắt lời ông Trump đôi ba lần, là tôi thấy cái đó là vi phạm luật mà không có người nào nói một câu. Đáng lẽ khi bà Kamala nói cái đó thì sau khi mà ông Trump trả lời xong, khi bà Kamala ngắt lời ông Trump thì những cái người đang tại sao không nói là bà là vi phạm luật rồi, bà không được làm, không nhắc gì đến cái điều đó. Thế tôi thấy về cái hình thức đó đúng như là anh Mai nói là không công bằng.
Quá không bằng, quá không. Và cái điều
cái phần nội dung thì sao? Cái phần đầu tiên hết là anh thấy như thế nào?
Cái điều nếu quý vị nào mà pay attention đó, thì cái cách bà Kamala bà trả lời giống như một cái bài thuộc lòng vậy. Đôi khi hai người chủ tọa hỏi một câu, bà trả lời câu khác, không liên quan gì hết. Ví dụ như ông chủ tọa hỏi cái bà có bao giờ gặp ông Putin chưa? Câu trả lời của bà là tôi gặp Zelensky 5 lần. Ủa lần sau? Câu hỏi là gặp ông tổng thống Putin chưa? Yes or no? Bà trả lời tôi gặp ông Zelensky 5 lần. Ủa vậy là sao?
Tức là tôi đã gặp ông Putin nhưng tôi không dám trả lời.
Một ý đâu ấy, nhưng một câu hỏi nếu vậy ông chu toàn phải hỏi lại, hay là bạn trả lời câu hỏi rồi, hay là nhắc lại câu hỏi. Nhưng mà khi mà quý vị thấy là sao, khi bà Kamala mà hơi bí cái là chủ tọa đổi câu hát được ngay tức khắc liền.
Đúng là như vậy, anh Mai nhận xét rất chính xác. Một đôi lần ông Trump cũng né tránh, không có
anh Khải báo con lên cho đây.
Một đôi lần ông Trump trả lời không thẳng vô câu hỏi thì bên phía người host, người anchor đó là dí lên. Nhưng mà tôi hỏi ông cái này, trong khi bà Kamala Harris trả lời né thì bên đài CBS không có ai hỏi lại dí bà đó cả. Dĩ nhiên chúng ta biết là cái kỹ thuật tranh luận đó là mình có quyền hỏi và người ta không có quyền trả lời. Nhưng tại sao khi ông Trump né trả lời một cách hơi khác đi qua cái đề tài khác thì bên những cái người hỏi đó, họ lại đặt vấn đề ông Trump, trong khi bà Kamala Harris không ai đặt vấn đề đó cả.
Thôi khi mình nói về công bằng mà tổng thống Trump mà vô hang ổ của ABC thì mình phải biết chuyện cái không công bằng rồi. Bây giờ mình bỏ chuyện không công bằng qua một bên. Bây giờ mình bàn vấn đề chính là từng point một nè. Đề nghị anh Khải lên sân khấu. Quý vị, Mai rất thích anh Khải lên tại vì mình có một cái angle nhìn khác nhau quý vị. Mai thì quý vị bận đồ là biết Mai ủng hộ ai rồi. Còn anh Khải thì có thể là ủng hộ bà Kamala Harris, it's okay. Để mình thấy những cái angle khác nhau quý vị. Mời anh Khải. Bởi vì biết anh Khải là tiếng Anh rất là lưu loát, bởi vì anh Khải rất là giỏi tiếng Mỹ và rất am hiểu việc chính trị.
Bây giờ có thể anh Khải mới vào thì hỏi anh Khải cái câu hỏi hồi nãy của hai người là anh thấy cái mặt hình thức á.
Trước khi cái đó anh có thể tóm tắt lại để cho anh Khải nắm rõ vấn đề là anh hỏi cái gì và anh Mai cũng như là tôi đã trả lời như thế nào.
Anh Khai với anh Khác mới vừa nói rằng cái cuộc tranh luận vừa rồi về mặt hình thức thì có vẻ như là nó có không có công bằng lắm, và cách đặt câu hỏi có cách là thiên vị, thì anh nghĩ như thế nào? Mặt hình thức trước đã.
Cái khúc đầu thì phải có xem, đúng anh Mai phải bỏ ra ngoài tí xíu mà cho phép phải nói tiếp. Anh Mai nãy anh Mai cũng đầu nãy nói có một cái rất hay, tức là anh Mai nói là ông Trump không thể hiện được đúng cái bản chất của ông này, đúng không ạ? Thì ra quý vị còn nhớ mấy bữa trước Khải có predict mà phải muốn cải chính anh Mai với anh nói là em không có ủng hộ bà Kamala Harris, nhưng mà em có tiên đoán là đảng Dân Chủ sẽ thắng mà thắng landslide, thì cho phép phải rất đạo lý. Thì giống như anh Mai thấy là tại sao hôm nay ông Trump, đúng không ạ, không có được là ổng, tức là không có được ủng hộ giống như bà ông đối xử, ông giật bà Hillary, đúng không ạ, phủ đầu lên, đúng không ạ, nasty woman này nọ. Thì thứ nhất là bên Dân Chủ họ học được cái bài học của họ rồi, đúng không ạ. Thành ra thưa anh Mai thà nghĩ đó cái vấn đề ông Trump không bị vô cái thế bị động như ngày hôm nay á, là có cả một cái tập đoàn truyền thông họ đã dành bẫy anh ta, tức là họ đã gài, họ đã tạo
Cho anh nhắc lại anh Khải nha, em nói là ông Trump thay đổi chiến thuật chứ em không nói là ông Trump bị mistake nha, different story.
Đúng rồi, tức là ông phải coi như là cái chọn cái thái độ, cái cách thể hiện.
Ý em nói là nhập gia tùy tục.
Đúng.
Khi mình đối diện một phụ nữ một public vậy, ông tổng thống Donald Trump nên thay đổi cách ăn nói cái điện để là tốt hơn. Cái mà ăn chê, ăn muốn chê nha.
Rồi. Nhưng mà đó là cái đó chắc ông cũng học được bài học của. Nhưng mà hồi xưa ông hoàn toàn không có sợ cái chuyện đó, mà ông biết cách tự, không biết anh có nhớ, anh Thoát còn nhớ mà. Tức là ông cũng Nhưng Khải nghĩ là bên dân chủ họ đã học được bài học, thành ra họ chăm khi ra đi cổng mình ra, có nghĩa là họ tạo dư luận, dọn đường dư luận. Thành ra giống như anh nói để mà giống như là họ cứ nói ông này cắm từ bố bãi như vậy cũng không tôn trọng phụ nữ.
Em không nói tôn trọng của nhà, em có nói.
Phải nói bên dân chủ.
Ok.
Đúng không? Thành ra đó, nhất là bây giờ lại đưa bà Pamela ngược lại, bà cũng ăn tưởng tượng, ăn rất tưởng tượng nè. Giống như coi phim tàu thấy mấy cái phim mà một cái thằng gian đại ác không? Giết bao nhiêu cao thủ ông cuối cùng cao mấy ông lộ quèo đó dồn lại dạy cho ông đệ tử.
Anh cứ ý này, bây mình xây focus đi từng point một.
Bây giờ nói về con gái đó thì bà Pamela bà cũng là học được từ đâu? Học được bà theory, có phải không ạ? Tức là những cái gì mà bà Hillary bà thất bại đó là bà phải cố vấn lại cho bà này. Và cái mà bây giờ ông Trump ông sợ là cái gì? Sợ phiếu của phụ nữ. Vâng, hồi nãy là bây giờ trả lời câu hỏi đó là cái việc mà anh thấy cái diễn biến như vậy thì cái cách bố trí, cách dẫn chương trình và cái cách trả lời của hai bên như vậy có công bằng không ạ? Hay là về mặt hình thức, về mặt ở bên ngoài đó chúng ta chưa đi vào nội dung rồi. Công bằng đó, tức là Khải không nghĩ là Khải rất tin tưởng vào truyền thông Hoa Kỳ. Đương nhiên họ có tin tưởng nhưng mà chắc chắn họ không thể nào là để mất cái uy tín họ nếu mà họ chọn host, đúng không? Mà họ đối xử bất công, Khải không bao giờ nghĩ họ.
Bây giờ để mình go straight to the point đi. Mày nói là không bằng number one. Nếu anh đếm từ đầu đến cuối khoảng chừng tất cả là khoảng chừng 40 câu hỏi. Đấy, em đếm khoảng chừng 40 câu hỏi. Anh nghĩ bao nhiêu câu hỏi hỏi bà Harris, bà Kamala Harris bao nhiêu câu hỏi?
Phần đầu hả?
Tất cả mọi của chương trình. Anh cứ đếm không?
Em có bận đi ra ngoài một chút xíu, hồi nãy không có hết chương trình, nhưng mà cái chung tổng quát là cái đa số câu hỏi là nó công bằng nhiều hay là công bằng ít.
Đối với nhân em.
Mấy cái đó tạm thời em tin tưởng anh Phát hoặc anh Mai Khải sẽ không có phủ nhận, tại Khải không có tư cách để mà đối mặt để mà coi như là phản biện với.
Theo Mai á đã nói lên đây là phải công bằng, con mình công bằng thì Mai thấy bữa nay là hoàn toàn công bằng, thiên vị rõ ràng. Tại vì tất cả câu hỏi bắt đầu với Donald Trump, không có câu hỏi nào bắt đầu với bài Harris thì nó vô lý. Câu hỏi nào có về kinh tế cũng Donald Trump, về biên giới cũng Donald Trump, về immigrant cũng Donald Trump, về Liên Xô cũng Donald Trump. Chưa có câu hỏi nào bắt đầu bà Harris. Ví dụ bà Harris bà đã làm, chưa bao giờ nhắc một câu nào là quay. Hai người chủ tọa chưa một lời nào nhắc về bà Harris, bà là phó tổng thống 3 năm rưỡi rồi, chưa một lời nhắc câu đó.
Có chứ, thầy nhớ là
không.
Có hỏi
fracking nó tại sao bà hồi xưa lúc bà chống, đúng không? Rồi bây giờ bà lại switch, bà lại binh.
Đúng, nhưng mà không nhắc bà là hiện giờ là phó tổng thống, từ đầu tôi không hề nhắc câu đó. Quý vị parking là gì để cho quý vị hiểu parking là gì. Hiện giờ tối cao phái viện của Mỹ là có 9 vị mà 6 là Cộng hòa, 3 dân chủ như vậy. Từ cái parking này rất quan trọng, có 9 người gọi là tối cao phái viện quan trọng. Đảng Dân Chủ là quý vị muốn sao? Muốn 90 người, thay vì là 9 người thì là 90 người. Có nghĩa là sao mình hiện giờ mình cần 81 người nữa. Mà nếu mà bà Kamala Harris và ông Biden là tổng thống thì 81 người này là dân chủ, thì coi như nước Mỹ thì thành dân chủ 100% luôn. Tại vì tất cả vote là một đảng nào rất là nguy hiểm, thì tổng thống chung chống điều đó. Và đảng Dân Chủ muốn parking có nghĩa là sao? Bầu thêm 81 người nữa, có nghĩa là thành 90 người, ví dụ vậy.
Cái fracking này là đang nói khai thác dầu.
Fracking này là drilling hai cái màu.
Fracking là cái phương thức khai thác dầu.
Bà cũng nói về chánh án lên.
Chánh án là khác, đang nói là anh nói